Okay, wait. Before you scroll past this, I need 30 seconds of your attention. Because what I'm about to tell you completely rewired how I think about parenting, family, and honestly, what it even means to raise a kid. Here's the thing. We treat breastfeeding like it's the most private, one mom, one baby thing in the world. Just you, your child, a quiet room, maybe a locked door, right? That's the picture in your head. But that picture, it's brand new. Like, historically speaking, it's a baby itself. Because for most of human history, across tribes and villages on nearly every continent, women shared the job of feeding babies. Not sometimes, not in emergencies, as a normal, everyday, totally not weird part of life. And today, we're diving into it. Let's go. So let's get something straight right away. This practice has a name. Scientists call it allonursing. Regular humans call it wet nursing, shared nursing, or milk sharing. And it is ancient. We're not talking about some rare oddity here. We're talking about a survival strategy that shows up again and again all over the map. Africa, South America, the Pacific Islands, ancient Europe. Different cultures, same idea. When a baby needed milk, the whole community had an answer. And that tells us something huge. It tells us that the way we do it now, one exhausted mom alone doing everything, is actually the strange version. The historical weird one is us. For thousands of years, feeding a baby was a team sport. So how did it actually work? What did these tribes believe? And why did we forget all of it? Buckle up. Let's start with the obvious. Life was hard, really hard. Think about it. A mother could get sick. A mother could die in childbirth, which sadly happened a lot. She might not produce enough milk. She might have twins and just physically couldn't keep up. And back then, there was no formula. There was no bottle you could grab off a shelf. If a baby didn't get breast milk, that baby didn't survive. So communities got smart. If your baby couldn't feed from you, another nursing mother stepped in. A sister, a cousin, a neighbor, a friend. This wasn't charity. This was survival. It was the difference between a child living and a child dying. And here's the beautiful part. It went both ways. The woman who fed your baby this month, you might feed hers next month. It was a web of trust, a safety net woven out of milk and mutual care. Pretty amazing when you actually think about it. Let's travel. First stop, Africa, where some of the richest traditions of shared nursing come from. In many African communities, the phrase, "it takes a village to raise a child," isn't a cute saying on a coffee mug. It was literally how things worked. Among various groups, babies were nursed by multiple women as a matter of course. Grandmothers, aunts, older sisters, close friends, they all pitched in. Anthropologists studying communities like the Efe people of Central Africa found something remarkable. Efe babies were regularly nursed by women other than their mothers, sometimes within hours of being born. Multiple caregivers, multiple feeders, all part of one tight community. The baby was, in a very real sense, everybody's baby. And this did something powerful. It meant a mom could rest. She could work. She could recover. She wasn't carrying the entire weight alone. The load was spread out, shared, softened. Imagine that kind of support today. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Now, let's hop across the ocean to the Pacific Islands, because they had their own beautiful version of this. In many island cultures, the family unit was huge and fluid. Children moved between households easily, and so did feeding. A baby crying and hungry near an auntie who happened to be nursing, that auntie fed the baby. No big ceremony, no awkwardness. It was just normal. And this connects to something deeper in these cultures, the idea that children belong to the community, not just to two parents. The bonds formed through shared nursing actually created lifelong family ties. In some traditions, a child nursed by another woman considered that woman's children to be like siblings. Milk didn't just feed the body, it literally built family. Let that sink in for a second. Sharing milk created relatives. That's a whole different way of seeing the world, and honestly, kind of a gorgeous one. Okay, now let's talk about the flip side. Because shared nursing wasn't always about equality and community warmth. Sometimes it was about status and money. Enter the professional wet nurse. For thousands of years, wealthy and powerful families hired other women to breastfeed their babies. This goes way back. We're talking ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. In fact, wet nursing was so common in the ancient world that they had actual written contracts for it. Real legal documents specifying how long the nurse would feed the child, what she'd be paid, and even rules about her diet and behavior. In ancient Rome, upper-class women often handed their newborns straight to a hired nurse, sometimes because they believed it was fashionable, sometimes so they could have more children faster, since breastfeeding can space out pregnancies. The nurse, often an enslaved woman or a poor woman who needed the income, did the feeding. And here's the uncomfortable truth we can't skip. For the wealthy, this was a choice and a luxury. For the woman doing the feeding, it was often survival or something forced on her. That class divide, it runs through this entire story. The powerful had options. The poor had to make do. Sound familiar? Now here's where it gets really interesting, because ancient people had some strong opinions about breast milk, and some of them were, let's say, creative. Across many cultures, people believed that a baby didn't just get food from milk. They believed the baby absorbed the nurse's character, her personality, her morals, her temperament, straight through the milk. So if you hired a wet nurse in the ancient world, you didn't just pick anyone. Oh no, families were incredibly picky. They wanted a nurse who was calm, kind, healthy, and of good character, because they genuinely feared a bad-tempered nurse would pass her bad temper right into the baby. Greek and Roman writers actually gave detailed advice on exactly what kind of woman to choose. Her age, her body type, her mood, all of it. Was any of this true? No, milk doesn't transfer your personality, but it tells us something fascinating about how deeply people believed feeding shaped a human being. To them, this wasn't just nutrition. This was building a person. Let's slow down here, because this next part really moved me. In many cultures, the bond between a nursing woman and a baby she fed was considered sacred, permanent, real. Not less than the bond with the birth mother, just different and equally important. In Islamic tradition, for example, there's a concept called milk kinship. If a woman breastfeeds a child, that child becomes her milk child and is considered a genuine relative. The woman's biological children become the baby's milk siblings. And this isn't symbolic. It carries real weight, even affecting who a person is allowed to marry later in life. Milk created a family bond as binding as blood. Think about how profound that is. In these worldviews, the act of feeding a child physically joined two families together forever. A stranger's baby became your baby. Your family grew, not through birth, not through marriage, but through milk. We really lost something there, didn't we? Okay, so if shared nursing was everywhere for thousands of years across the whole planet, what happened? Why don't we do this anymore? A few big things. First, industrialization. As people moved into cities and away from tight-knit villages, those built-in support networks broke apart. Grandma wasn't next door anymore. The village scattered. Second, and this is the giant one, the invention of infant formula. In the late 1800s, and especially the 1900s, commercial formula arrived. Suddenly, for the first time in human history, you could feed a baby without another woman's milk. That changed everything. The safety net of shared nursing, we didn't need it the same way anymore, so it quietly faded. And third, changing attitudes. As societies grew more private, more individual, more focused on the small nuclear family, the idea of another woman feeding your baby started to feel strange, even taboo. The thing that was once totally normal became something we'd raise an eyebrow at. So let's zoom out, because after all this, there are a few things I just can't stop thinking about. First, moms were never meant to do this alone. For nearly all of human history, they didn't. Feeding a baby was a shared job, held up by a whole community of women. The isolated, do-it-all-yourself modern mom, That's the historical experiment. And honestly, it's a pretty tough one. Second, this was never really about the milk itself. It was about connection, about trust, about communities weaving themselves together, keeping each other's children alive, and building family out of care. That's the real story here. And third, we tend to think our modern way is the natural, obvious, correct way. But history keeps proving us wrong. What feels normal to us right now is just one tiny chapter in a very, very long book. You know, we build museums for kings and monuments for warriors. We make movie after movie about battles and empires and famous men. But the quiet, everyday act that literally kept our entire species alive, women feeding each other's babies generation after generation, that barely gets a mention. And yet, this is one of the most human things that has ever happened. In every corner of the world, women looked at a hungry child, one that wasn't even theirs, and said, "I've got you." That's not a small thing. That's the whole thing. So the next time someone acts like raising a child is a solo mission, you can gently remind them, it never was. Not once. Not for 100,000 years. It always, always took more than one. And maybe, just maybe, it still should.